Hey everyone, today is May 18th and today I was with Courtside Ministries at the courthouse at 26 in California in Chicago. And as we were there, I saw a guy coming down the steps as he was leaving the courthouse. And as he was coming down, I could tell it was really hard for him to get down each step. And as he left the steps, he was limping as he was walking. And so I went over to him and I was just like, "Hey man, what's going on? What happened with your hips?" And you could tell he didn't really want to talk to me. He kind of looked like he was a gangbanger, and I kind of later figured out that he was. And he was just like, kind of giving me short answers. I was like, "Well, what's going on with your hip?" And he's like, "Oh, it hurts." I was like, "Well, what happened?" He's like, "Well, I was shot." And I was like, "Oh, well, let me tell you this story." And I told him the story about Madison and Pulaski with the bullet that disappeared out of the guy's shoulder. If you haven't heard that one, go back in my video blog and check it out. It's pretty good. And I told him about the story of it disappeared out of his shoulder, and he got real intrigued when I mentioned that. And he just had pain. It was about a year since he was shot. He had pain in his hip. There was no bullet there, but I was like, "Can I pray for you?" He's like, "Sure, man, you can pray for me." And as we're standing there, and I kind of started praying. I didn't put my hand on it because I felt uncomfortable, big shock, because I didn't want to put my hand on his hip. And I just started praying, and as we were praying, a couple of his buddies walked up, and they were greeting each other, saying hi and everything. And as he was talking, I found out he has 3 court cases going on right now, and he's been in and out of jail a number of times. So after he was done praying, I kind of was like, "Oh, I just lost my chance here," because a lot of times when somebody interrupts or walks up, the other person is just like, "Oh, I have to go now," or whatever happens. But this time it didn't happen. He said, "Okay, now you can pray for me." So I prayed for him, and I just had him put his hand on his hip, and I just put my fingers on his hand. And as I was standing there, I just commanded it to be better. In the name of Jesus, I commanded the pain to go away, the way I always pray for healing. And I said, "So how is it?" And he's kind of like, "Well, maybe it's a little better, not really sure." So, "Well, can I pray again?" And so I prayed again, and I was like, "So how is it?" And he's like walking around, he's like, "It's better." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean by it's better?" He's like, "No, there's no more pain. God completely took this pain out of him from this bullet wound." I had him walk, and I watched him walk. He had no more limp, completely pain-free, and I got to sit there and talk with him. He was really interested, and he's like, "Well, what do you say to people who don't believe that prayer works?" And he started engaging me in this conversation. I got to tell him a little more about Jesus, and he didn't accept Jesus right then and there, but it was one of those steps, just sowing in, sowing in, sowing in. But God healed his hip, no more pain, no more limp, for this gangbanger who's in and out of court. You know what? God's doing some work in the gangbangers. He is transforming this city, and it is so good. So I hope you take this encouragement, go out in the streets, and be Jesus with skin on.